Welcome to the Grandpa channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Rivers. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on a mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly, funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. Listen up, grandpas. Have you actually pulled the trigger on recording your life story? I'm talking video, baby. They want to remember your corny jokes, your crooked smile, your rugged good looks, and the jaunty bounce of your voice. What if I told you there was a really easy way to do this? Recently, I sat down and I told my life story on video. Not the whole thing, but the good stuff, the messy stuff, the funny stuff, the parts I didn't want to forget and the parts that I did not want my kids and my grandkids to forget. Planted Media made it so easy. They came to me, set up everything, and then they did some editing voodoo magic that made me look like $1 million. Go to plantedmediaco.com and tell them Rivers sent you, and you'll get a nice little Grandpa Channel discount. All right, back to the show. Good morning, and welcome to the Grandpa Channel. We have a terrific guest here today, Wayne Samuelson, who's a retired pulmonologist. He's a friend of our family, especially a wonderful and great friend of my dad and my mom. And I'm happy to have you here on the show.
Thanks.
And tell us just a little bit about you.
Well, there's not much to tell. I grew up in Salt Lake City and fulfilled a lifelong dream to go to medical school. And after medical school, did some time at Duke University for training and then stayed there for another 10 years. So we were in North Carolina for 15 years and 4 of our 5 children were born there.
Wow.
And we moved back to Utah in 1995 to get a spot at the University of Utah and moved into the neighborhood where I met your parents.
Wayne and his son, Brian, became fast and great friends with my mom and dad. They had an assignment in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that was called home teacher. But I have told people, Wayne, that you were the best home teacher in the church.
It was really a wonderful experience for us. And as I mentioned, we enjoyed going there so much that we didn't ever think of it as an obligation. We thought it was a privilege. And we went more than the standard once a month just because it was so much fun.
It was, but it was just so appreciated. And as a family, you have how many grandkids?
Well, I currently have 8 grandchildren with another one due to arrive in March.
Wow, cool.
And that's pretty exciting for us too.
Yeah. Has there been anything about being a grandpa that surprised you?
Well, I think I was surprised about how much fun it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the son of a great grandfather. And I mean, he was super to my kids and all of his kids, but I didn't realize just how much fun it was. You know, the old adage, if you knew how much fun it would be to have grandkids, you'd have them first. They're the reward you get for not having your own kids when they were teenagers. So it's been really fun, and they are great kids.
What's the age range on the kids?
Well, our oldest is 17, due to turn 18 in December, and then we have, one that's going to be born in March, and then a 3-year-old that's kind of behind that. So they're spread.
Where are they all located?
Well, our oldest daughter lives in Salt Lake City, and she has 2 sons. Our oldest grandchild, her son Moses, lives with them. This daughter just came back from about a year and a half in Germany. Our grandson Moses was a math whiz. He graduated. He didn't really bother going to high school, just went to the university.
Really?
Homeschooled and then into the university and graduated with degrees in math and German. And then he had an opportunity to do some research in Leipzig, Germany. And so they went over there. And because he was a minor, his mom had to be with him. So his mom and his little brother went. His father had to go back and forth because his dad teaches at BYU.
Yeah.
And so they just barely moved back finally. And so that's been fun. So those 2 are here. And then I have a daughter in Hartford, Connecticut. She has 3 kids. She has the 2 girls and a boy there. And then another daughter lives in New York City.
Wow.
She has a son and a daughter, but she's the one that's expecting another baby, which we are told will be a boy in March. And then Brian lives here. He has 1 son. And I have another daughter, Jennifer, that lives very close to us. They don't have any children, but they've got a great dog. I actually only really knew one grandparent personally.
Yeah, tell me about it.
My father's father My grandmothers, I knew both of them. I met both of them. My mother's mother died when I was about 7, but she'd spent most of my life in a nursing home. And so she was a sweet lady. My sisters and older brothers have great memories of her. I did not know her that well because of just kind of stage of life she was in. I have one vague memory of my father's mother. She was sick, dying of cancer. And I can remember visiting her one time with my dad. My mother's father died before I was born.
Wow.
And so my father's father that's where the Samuelson name comes from. He was the son of Swedish immigrants and a laborer, really humble guy, but tremendous craftsman. And I had the enormous privilege of spending many days a week with him during a year while we were building a house on holiday. He was such a craftsman. My dad was a do-it-yourselfer. He was a college professor, but we built this house as a family, and Gramps would come and help.
Really?
And he had tremendous skills, but since he was only a couple years older than I am right now, but I viewed him as being an old, kind of feeble guy.
Crazy.
And so he would come work on the house, and I would be his assistant. And he'd tell me how to use tools.
Really?
And he told me all these great stories about the Depression.
Really?
And one of the few people you could ever talk to that could make you feel like, wow, the Depression wasn't that bad.
Really?
And it just because his point of view was just so positive.
He had a very positive point of view. So how was that carry over in stories, or how did that carry?
He told these wonderful stories, and I thought he told them to all the grandkids, but I think I got most of them because I was with him a lot.
Assistant.
I was his assistant, and I was, I guess, 10 or 11 years old. Yeah, he talked about this. This all kind of started out. My father had received a call to serve the church as a missionary, Central United States. And one of the neighbors came over and said, "Oh, Brother Samuelson, since your son's going to serve a mission, you'll never want for anything." And the next day, my grandpa lost his job. And I said, "Well, Gramps, that's terrible." And he said, "Oh, no. It was great." He says, "Because I was able to find a job at the brickyard." Now, the brickyard, which is now, the shopping center, was really a brickyard.
Yeah.
And a clay pit. And he got a job there stacking the wet brick in the drying room. And so these big, heavy clay bricks, because they're still wet, all the men stacked them. And the drying room was hot. It wasn't the kiln, but it was, had to be hot. People would, most men could not do that for more than a week or two before they'd get sick and then get fired because they couldn't come to work. He'd say, "Oh, I was able to do that for years."
Really?
And I said, "Well, gee, that sounds bad." He said, "No, it was wonderful." He says, "And then I got another job. I did that during the day. And then at night, he'd go downtown and he got a job cleaning out the boilers in the big buildings, office buildings. And that's kind of dirty work too. You'd have to go in and very dusty." He says, and people would get sick and they couldn't do that very long. He says, "But I never got sick. I was able to do that." So he would work all day stacking, his wet brick. And then he would come home and have a bowl of bread and milk. That was his dinner. And then he would go off and work in cleaning out these boilers downtown all night and come home and get a couple hours sleep and start over again. And I said, "Grandpa, that sounds horrible." Okay. You had to work that hard. It was just terrible. And he'd say, "Well, no, that's how I knew that my Heavenly Father loved me."
Really?
Because first of all, the jobs were there. And secondly, I could do them and I never got sick.
Wow.
And then in between, because he was such a craftsman, people would hire him to do, he'd build cabinets and put a room on here, put a staircase here. And he would do all those things. And he was a master painter back in the days when painters made their own paint. So, for the better part of a year, several days a week and all day on Saturday, I would hear these stories from my grandpa. And meanwhile, he would teach me how to use tools, how to hold a hammer, how to swing a hammer, how to use a saw,
really
how to hold a paintbrush.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And
so do you paint really well?
no, the skills themselves didn't translate, but the love for that kind of work. I mean, I joke now I'm starting my second career. I'm trying to get back to learn how to, do woodworking. And so I have tools. I'm not very good at using them, but I have a toolbox that he and my father conspired to give me when I was 11. And so that's the toolbox I use. And I have these great memories of him, but he was just this faithful, humble man. I don't remember ever hearing him raise his voice. I don't remember him ever being angry, but just a man of absolute faith, not educated himself, but he encouraged all of us in school and was delighted that when we had success. And
did he have a good native intelligence?
He was a smart man.
He was a smart guy.
He could look at a project and say, okay, this is how much we're going to need. And he didn't need to measure things very much because he could just see it. During this time, he had cataracts. He'd had some heart trouble. And so my mom sort of made it sound like I was supposed to protect him from himself. But he just could see things and understand things.
Now, was he born here, or was he born in the old country?
He was born here.
And it was his parents?
His parents were immigrants. And his name was Hilge, and he spelled it Hilge. When I was meeting some Swedish physicians later on in life, and I talked to them about my grandpa, they said, well, that's not really a Swedish name.
Kind of a name, is it?
So it was probably Helge, Helge.
Oh, yeah.
But I think in the home, his parents had decided they were going to be Americans. So they did not, I asked me one time, I said, well, you speak Swedish, Grandpa? And he goes, no,
No.
no, we didn't speak Swedish. We spoke English. My parents struggled with that. He says, but we were going to be Americans. And so we really didn't, they didn't try to import traditions. And so I think what happened is they called him Helga and it just turned into Hilgi. That's what he called him. And I have a grandson named Hilgi.
Oh, that's really
Yeah.
cool. That's
So-
really cool. So you knew your grandpa really,
Really, really well.
How old was he when he passed away?
He was in his 80s.
Uh-huh.
That's interesting. I'd been off serving in active duty in the National Guard, my basic training. And he died a couple of days before I finished my training. And so I was allowed to come home early for his funeral because I was National Guard. And later on, my mother showed me his journal that he dictated and helped, and and he had a lot of references. But his last reference was that he received a letter from his grandson Wayne, who was in the Army at Fort Polk, where he was going to do 6 months of military service before leaving on his mission to Germany. I went to Germany, but I hadn't had a call by then.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting.
But he was just this wonderful, nice man. I mean, my other grandfather was a great man too. I just didn't get to know him, but he left journals behind. He was a Scottish immigrant and also a laborer, and but a man of significant native intelligence. And
Well, I mean, your dad was a university professor.
yeah,
What was he a professor of?
my dad's a professor of educational psychology. His special interest was vocational rehabilitation, but he also did counseling and guidance.
Yeah.
I had a couple of counselors while I was in school, mostly junior high school, that had been his students. I'm not sure how that really worked out. But my dad started out as not a very enthusiastic student. In fact, my dad used to tell us that he wasn't sure he'd graduate from high school. He knew he had a diploma.
He wasn't quite sure how he got there.
He said, I think they may have given that to me in order to get me out.
Yeah.
But when he met my mother was going to college. Education was really important in her family. And so I think it kind of became clear to him that he was going to have to pursue education. And so he did. He got admitted to the University of Utah under probation. And the first thing he had to do was take a study methods class. And that was just revelation for him. And so he ended up doing very well. He, made the dean's list and graduated Phi Kappa Phi, and it took him a while to get through because he started school late, and then he was married, had kids, and worked through. So he didn't get his PhD until I was about a year and a half old. I'm number 5. But his first job was at the university. He was hired on the faculty there, but he had quite a I think a distinguished academic career, and was one of the kind of the founders of vocational rehabilitation in the Western United States.
Well, how many kids are in your family?
There are 5 of us. There are 2
Are
boys.
you the youngest?
I'm the youngest. 2 boys, 2 girls, and then I came along.
And then, I mean, education's been a big deal. In your family.
My dad, I guess, because not wanting us to make the same mistakes he'd make in school, he used to sit us down, the night before school started, and he'd say, you go to school, you take notes. You come home, you study your notes. The next day you go and you take notes. You come home and you study notes from that day and the day before. Really? You just keep reviewing your notes. And so when it comes time for the exam, you really know the material. But Dad, I'm 3rd grade. I'm not taking notes. Well, you should. But yeah, and both my parents.
Did you follow that later on?
I did. My mom had been an elementary school teacher. She kind of hovered.
Did she?
Yeah, she made sure we knew how to read. By the time I got to high school, I was thinking it was time for my mom to stop going to parent-teacher conferences. She didn't think that. She went to my junior English teacher, who told her that I was a bright boy, but I was not giving my best effort.
Really?
So my teacher told my mother.
Oh, okay.
My mother came home and just you'd have thought that he's doing drugs out behind the school or something like that. She was so furious. And I said, well, Mom, I'm getting an A. Did I ask you what your grade was?
Yeah.
No, you're not trying.
Yeah.
She got my teacher to give me extra work.
Really?
I think they said something, well, he looks like he has a talent for writing. And so my mother had my teacher assign me extra writing.
Wow.
I didn't need to do this to get a grade in class, but I needed to do it to hold on to my driver's license.
The almighty driver.
Car keys would be forfeited if I didn't do this.
Yeah.
In retrospect, that worked out well for me because knowing how to write is a good thing in my profession, and it's something I've done recreationally ever since.
My cute mom, who so well, when I was growing up, during the summer, we'd have summer school, and she would tear out from her magazines that she'd have, like Time or Life or whatever, and then she'd tear these pictures out, and she'd say, write a story about this. I was like in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I said, well, can I make it funny? And she says, I'd love that. And so I would sit at this little table and write stories, and she was, she was an easy laugh, and so it encouraged me. And that's where I learned how to write, just from my cute mom.
Yeah. Well, I think that in my professional career, which was, I was in academic medicine, and being able to write was very important. So I was very angry at my English teacher and very angry at my mother for a lot of years, but it worked out well for me. In retrospect, I owe them both an apology.
Did you bury the hatchet with your mom?
Eventually, yeah.
That's a good one. So what kind of grandparents were your mom and dad?
They were incredibly loving and patient. My dad, again, kind of a do-yourselfer. After he retired, he built himself a motorhome. Built it, yeah. He wanted to learn how to, he wanted to have a metal frame. And so he bought the metal and cut it in small pieces and bought a welder and practiced welding until I could do all kind of angles.
Wow.
And then he built this big motorhome. But they used it a little bit as, for camping and stuff. But mostly he'd fire that thing up on Saturday mornings and go around and pick up all his grandkids in town and take them to Burger King.
Really?
And my kids didn't get involved in that because we were living in North Carolina at the time.
Yeah.
All of my nieces and nephews can talk about going with Grandpa, to Burger King. And I remember when he turned 70, we came back from North Carolina to be part of the birthday celebration, which they celebrated at McDonald's. He had the party, and I remember going with my sister over to make sure everything was set up. And they said, "Well, now how old is the birthday boy?" And my sister said, "Well, he's 70." She said, "No, these parties are for children." And my sister said, "This is the biggest kid you're ever going to see." And so at the appointed hour, they all showed up. My dad got the crown.
Are there pictures?
There are pictures of this. And, they brought the birthday cake out, and the kids all gathered around. He loved that.
That is funny.
He was a big kid. And even with my kids, even though they were, not physically there, he made sure that he called them and talked with them, and he shared all their things, all their successes, and sold them for their failures. And so they all knew him. He just made a point to be part of their life.
So what things have you tried to incorporate from your dad's example and your wonderful grandfather's example with your kids and with your grandkids?
Well, my dad sat down with me. I guess he could see that Marianne and I were getting serious. And we were working on a project in the garage. And he said, if you marry the right person, you can make a lot of other mistakes and it won't matter. If you marry the wrong person, it's pretty hard to overcome that. And you just can't make that right. So you got to make sure you're marrying the right person. So I did. I mean, and he loved Marianne, and he admired her. And of course, when my mom saw that I brought home a future school teacher, because Marianne taught elementary school, boy, she was in. So I tried to emulate him in listening. He's a much better listener than I am. And as I recall, I didn't get a whole lot of advice from my father, as advice. What I would go is I would talk, and he would ask me questions until I arrived at the right conclusion for myself.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And that was a skill that I tried to emulate, but I don't think I did very, very well at. But I can remember thinking of my father as the wisest man I've ever known. I still feel that way.
When did he pass away?
He died at the age of 76. We were in North Carolina, and I'd had sort of a premonition for years that, that I would get a phone call from my brother and say, "Dad's gone, you better come home." And that's pretty much what happened.
Really?
Yeah. We called, and Marianne took the whole I was out, and I came home and, answered the door, walked in the door, and she said, "Your brother just called." I knew what it was. He left behind quite a legacy. The thing that he did that I've tried to do, and I'm not sure again, each of us had a piece of him, and something that we did with him. So he was a do-yourselfer. He had tools and construction. My oldest brother was a carpenter, and he actually worked as a carpenter while he was going to college. And so he had the carpentry tools. We all did all this stuff together. But my brothers and I and my dad would go target shooting at the Holiday Gun Club. And we'd do that a couple of Saturdays a month for a while. And then we'd come home and we'd clean the guns, and then we would reload the shells. We had a little lead furnace and stuff. And we never hunted. I think my dad had hunted before. My brothers may have, but we never pointed a gun at anything alive. But we destroyed a lot of targets. And so my second brother got the guns, and then the tools to work on cars. And my dad had done some photography, and that had fascinated me, and he got me into the darkroom at an early age. And so I got all his camera and his photography equipment, which I still have in my house. And my sisters also had the same thing. And my dad was bald. And had red hair, and he sunburned very easily, not unlike Lou. So we had hats and he would always wear a hat to go outside. And so we each got a hat.
Really?
But we each had our little piece of our dad that we knew was ours. And I tried to do that. We kept having daughters, and I think, well, what can I do with my daughters? But he did that, and I never felt judged by my dad. I knew I disappointed him from time to time, but it was not. He's very forgiving, very encouraging.
Did he raise his voice much?
No, but when he did, it was memorable. I remember, I remember being told by, I think it was one of my teachers or somebody, your dad's a psychologist, so I'll bet you never get spanked.
Yeah.
No, we got spanked.
Did you?
Yeah. Not very often. It was almost, I think in my case, nearly always because I'd sass my mother. He would sit you down. He'd say, okay, now this is, you crossed the line here.
Yeah.
And
did you agree most of the time?
Oh, yeah. He'd work this thing. And so he'd sit there and he'd say, so you're going to be punished. Now you see on TV, people say, this is going to hurt me a lot more. It's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
No, this is going to hurt you. You're going to feel this. and I want you to remember it. And they kept thinking, can we get it?
The anticipation. It's killing.
And then you'd get a couple of swats to the bottom.
Yeah.
And that was it. But
pain that much?
No.
But it was the anticipation.
The anticipation was always worse than the pain. Because they didn't, And in the days before timeout, my mother had a chair. And in fact, I still have the chair. It was a high chair, but if you were disobedient, you'd have to sit on the chair.
Yeah.
And if you were sitting on the chair when my dad came home, he didn't ask any questions. You just got it, right? Yeah. And so my mother was very effective in making sure that, she would let you off just as the car was pulling the driveway, unless you'd read something bad. Yeah. But he, my dad had a good sense of humor. My dad did a sabbatical in Mexico in the latter part of his career. So they were gone for 6 months. And my oldest brother and his wife moved in to take care of us. I was a teenager. And they had a speech contest in a church, and I had not wanted to participate in it. Each class had to have a representative. Well, I was into playing basketball in the church league, and the basketball coach was my leader. Right? In fact, a profound influence on my life as well. And so he said, well, I think you should be the one to represent our class in the speech contest. And I said, well, I'd rather not. He said, you'd rather not play basketball?
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he made it very clear that, that was kind of contingent
on that.
So I was kind of gruff, and my parents were gone. So I was over at my friend's house, and I said, I got to do this. And the broad theme was exploring, as I recall. And so I said, well, I'm just going to make up a total story. So I made up a story about a poet. And I even gave him a name. And my friend on the spot wrote out his terrible poem. Just wrote a poem for him. And so then I, went into the contest and gave this talk about this, frontier poet that had physical problems and couldn't work. And so he wrote poetry. And then I read this terrible poem. It was so bad that people thought it was good. Anyway, and so I won. And I had, there were more levels of competition, and I got all the way to the final and won for my age group. And so that was, it was just this old cock and bull story. My parents came back from sabbatical sometime later, and my sister just couldn't resist. Do you know what Wayne did while you were gone? My mother was mortified. Oh, she was so upset. Father, deal with your son. Yeah. And so he takes me in the room. I'm thinking, oh, here it comes. Yeah. He shuts the door and he said, no, we're going to sit here for a few minutes because your mom needs to know we're dealing with this. Yeah. And then he started to laugh. He said, tell me how you did this. And he said, okay, we'll walk out and make sure mom thinks you've been punished. So, yeah. And that's become part of the family lore too.
Well, if you were to think what's your, Superman had his superpowers. He also has kryptonite that, what would you say your superpowers are as a grandpa?
Well, I don't know if I've got superpowers as a grandpa. I think my best superpower is that I married a great grandma. And she is the one that thinks about the kids, and I just try to follow her lead. And, I hope they know I love them. And they've all been good kids. But I think the one thing that my dad did that I really liked is he always showed up. He was always there. And on the rare occasion when he couldn't be there, you knew that he wanted to be there. And he made that very clear. And he always asked how you did. And it didn't matter if you'd failed. In his eyes, you couldn't fail. I mean, nothing you did was a failure. It was anywhere from really good to just outstanding. But if you did something really good and got recognized for it, he kind of kept you back on earth, And okay, well, still your turn to take out the garbage, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I tried to emulate that. I don't know if I've done it as well. Yeah. But, he was just really great.
Yeah. So kind of a couple of off the wall questions. If I could somehow teleport your dad, I'm going to do this with your grandpa too, and have him kind of, come and sit right here, what do you think they would say? What would your dad say to you?
Good question. Well, while I was learning how to use tools, my dad made it very clear that I was not to get near power tools.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as I got old enough and had enough money, I bought power tools.
Why did he have that? Was it just a
Well,
lazy way out?
No, he was concerned. Remember, he was vocational rehabilitation.
Yeah.
He had seen people that had lost hands and stuff. And then, while we were building the house, my oldest brother, who was the trained carpenter, had an accident and nearly lost a finger. Didn't lose it, was able to be repaired and things got well. But, you want to go to medical school, you need your hands. So,
true. I had thought about that.
But I think, if he were to see my garage now, and he'd wonder why I have so many power tools. You know how to use all these. The answer to that, not nerd. No. I think he would probably say that I'm taking some things too seriously, and some things that I'm not taking seriously, I should take more seriously.
Really?
Yeah. But he was the most forgiving guy you could ever make. If you made a terrible mistake, even if you hurt him, I mean, I was a young kid in the house that we lived in until I was 10 years old, and had a big front window, and I broke that window.
How did you break it?
Well, there was a cat there, and I threw a rock at the cat, tried to get the cat to move. And
were you inside or out?
I was outside, and it cracked the window. So he said, "How'd that happen?" And I said, "Well, Dad, there was this kid that came through the neighborhood, and he said the cat was on there. He said, 'Do you want me to get that cat down there for you?' And I said, 'Yeah.' And he threw a rock at the cat, and he missed the cat, and hit the window and cracked it. And I'm sorry." And he goes, "So who's the kid?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, just some big kid, bigger than me, Dad."
Yeah.
And so he just fixed the window. I mean, he took the plane out, and he had me help him.
Yeah.
So I had to be there and watch, and he fixed the window.
What was going through your head while you were fixing and getting this fixed?
Why isn't he killing me? I realized pretty soon into it that he hadn't bought my story at all.
Yeah. So who's this kid?
Which made me feel worse.
Because he added insult to injury.
Yeah. And then he just fixed it.
That's funny.
And he said something effective. It's important to realize that most things can be fixed. Nearly all things can be fixed. So you don't want to worry about things that get broken, but you don't want to break things that can't be fixed.
Oh, that's a great lesson. Really?
Yeah.
So did he ever tell you, I knew that you were telling me a whopper or anything like that? How old were you when that?
Well, I would have been younger than 10 because we moved when I was 10.
Yeah.
And so I was,
Oh, that's interesting. What a great man.
Yeah. And, he had some things that were really important to him. I told you he'd done some photography, and that was my connection with him. So I got his beloved Leica camera that he had saved for and had purchased, and he treated it just with fair respect. He let me use it from time to time, which was, I thought he loved that camera more than he loved me, but for a while there. So I still have that camera.
Do you really?
And, it's old now, and it's a really nice collector's item. A few years ago, I found a guy in Boston. I was visiting my daughter, and I found this guy up in Boston. So I took the camera to him, and he took it apart and cleaned it and lubricated everything. And he said, "Wow," he said, this camera has really had good care.
German, right?
Yeah.
Leica.
The guy that fixed it was Chinese, but I mean, it wasn't broken. He just, I wanted to service it. And he said, "How did you get this camera?" And I said, "I got it from my father." And he said, "Well, your father knew how to take care of cameras." I said, "My father knew how to take care of everything." And so I still have that camera. I never use it, but I have it on my shelf in my closet, and I look at it from time to time. It brings back a lot of memories.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So let's turn the tables a little bit. Your dad would tell you that and through him, you gave yourself some great advice. But what would you tell your dad?
My dad worried about everything, but he never showed it. He internalized that. I think I'd try to say, roll with it a little bit, Dad. Of course, a child of depression. His missionary journal when he was off, when my grandpa was stacking bricks, I got a dollar in the mail from my dad. I mean, he learned to do with that. And he, like a lot of people who came through the depression, he didn't throw anything away. When my parents died, we cleaned out their house. My dad had a room full of nuts and bolts and odds and ends that he just kept in case you might need it someday.
In case you might need it, yeah.
So, but I think the thing that I wanted him to know, and I think that we all wanted to know, is how grateful we were that he was our dad, because he was an amazing man.
So let's teleport your wonderful grandfather.
Okay.
So what do you think he would tell you?
Well, I think he would tell me that school was worth it. I mean, he hadn't gone to school himself. I think, as I recall, I don't think he finished sixth grade, because he had to work. I think one of the reasons why my dad struggled in high school is that my dad would, he'd take my dad out of school and they'd go paint houses, I mean, they worked together. Yeah. And he admired people who were educated. He just didn't think that was for everybody. And so here he is his oldest, my oldest brother, achieved quite a bit academically. I think became a university president of a rival institution.
Whose name we will mention.
Situated somewhat to the south. I think I would tell him that his legacy was great and that we recognize his sacrifice. He didn't ever view things as that he did without his sacrifices.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a really cool way to look at it, though.
It was always a privilege. Well, this whole thing about, they taught me this is, because I had a chance to work hard, and that's how I knew God loved me. Every Christmas and birthday, all these grandkids would get a brand new dollar bill. And they'd get these little cards you could put in. So you'd open the envelope and George Washington.
Yeah, his face would be,
we'd all say, "Oh, thanks, Gramps. That's great." And he'd say, "Oh no, I'm so glad I can do this."
Really?
Yeah.
That's such a cool attitude.
For him, sacrifice was not sacrifice. It was not doing without. It was being able to do something for someone else. And he was just so kind and so generous. And again, this toolbox, and I had a saw and I had my own hammer and I had a few other tools, and they were from him. That made him special. And I said, "Well, I can't use these tools, Grandpa. That's why I gave them to you. They're to be used." I said, "Well, they're from you."
Yeah.
He'd say, "Well, I want you to use them. And that's how you'll remember me."
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So the saw went by and everything, but I still have that toolbox.
Do you?
And I trip over it every day in the garage as I come in from my car.
Man. Okay, I've got maybe one final question for you. You're sitting here as in your early 70s. You're young. I'm young. I'd work under these, the pretenses. But I guess what advice would you have as a 72, 73-year-old Wayne to a 30 or 40-year-old Wayne? What would you have said to yourself, looking back, having these experiences?
Well, I think I took some things too seriously. I worried more about my career than I probably should have. I think that would be something I might say. Overall, I think I would say it's going to work out. Life is going to be okay. And I go back to the advice my dad gave me. I married the right person. Yeah. And that really made all the difference.
It was funny. My dad and mom, when they were dating, and he was head over heels in love with her. I guess one date or one night, she just said to him, she kind of gave it her checklist of what she wanted. And she said, "I want to marry someone who's going to be a college graduate." And my dad said, "Okay, I can do that." He wasn't planning on doing that. And there were a couple other things. His dad was an alcoholic, as you know, and my mom said, "I just want to have a really good father for my children." And I wondered if he was thinking, can I do that? Is it possible? He did. He did a 180. Home Alone would call it a 360. But, he did this 180 and was exactly the opposite of my grandfather to me. But I just, the love of a good woman who, wants you to stand up straight and fly right and all that sort of stuff is pretty amazing. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. And this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for coming and listening to the Grandpa Channel. And I'm pretty tired. I'm going to go take a nap. Thanks so much. That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. Leave a review, share it with a friend, or better yet, tell your favorite grandpa. We're on a mission to gather 1 million grandpas, storytellers, wisdom keepers, and lovable wild cards. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes just slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here.